we have a voice that can actually make a difference, because I think words are so powerful, and what we put out into the universe, it means a lot.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to a new episode of the Days of Change podcast. Yes, it has been a long intermission, 3 months since the last podcast was published. It wasn't planned like this, but I took 6 weeks off, traveled a bit, and did a lot of reading. And after coming back from vacation, new projects mounted up, among them an in-house change days, which we did for GIZ, the German Agency for International Collaboration. I tell you, that was a great experience. 2 weeks ago, I had a keynote at a conference of systems thinkers on identity and belonging in the digital age, and I'd love to talk more about that. Maybe we find a little point in that conversation today, but maybe I should do an extra show on this topic. Maybe I find somebody who interviews me. If you want to listen to other podcast episodes, for example, the famous one of Dana Ferrand on the Dominatrix's Lessons on Leadership, or Nick Beeson's on A Life on the Road, or Mary Alice Arthur on the Power of Stories, Eugenio Molini on Love and Pain and Change Processes, and many, many more. So if you want to listen to them, go to changedays.com/podcast, where you will find also the show notes, or just search for Days of Change podcast in your favorite podcast app. I'm pretty excited about my guest today, Simone Sloan from New York City. We will talk about self-awareness and reflection and power, a topic I'm passionate about, and we will also vent into the question of how to use your voice to become an advocate. This connects nicely actually with the last podcast, which I published before summer, with Martine Reiners, a Belgian opera singer. Singing liberates the soul. That's the message Martine brings to the world. As I said, if you want to listen to that fabulous episode, please go to changedays.com/podcast. Simone, we met, I think, 2 years ago when you came to the Berlin Change Days, together with your wonderful colleague Minna Taylor.
Yes.
Yeah, let's talk about that experience a little bit later. I want to introduce you briefly to our audience, and then we go into details of your life. Simone, you are an executive coach and facilitator, and you support companies in getting their business and marketing strategies right. If that sounds dull and dry to our listeners, I can tell you that Simone is the absolute opposite. She is a bomb, full with energy, and if you have seen her facilitating, you will not forget her because of her presence and passion with which she touches everybody. Simone has a lot of inside business experience, and we are going to talk about that in a moment. Simone, it's an honor, and I know it will be a pleasure to having you on the Days of Change podcast. Thanks for showing up. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Holger. It's a pleasure to be here. Really excited to be here with you.
Great. Simone, so my first question to you is, what's the title of the current chapter of your life?
Oh, the current chapter of my life, I would say seeking curiosity to find new opportunities.
All right, seeking curiosity. That's nice. I just said in that keynote 2 weeks ago when I introduced myself, if I can introduce myself, it's I'm a curious person. We have a very nice word in German, which is Neugier, which means lust for news.
Oh, I love
lust
that.
for new things.
Yes. Yeah. I think, yes, I love that.
Yeah. All right.
I'm going to use that from now on.
Yeah, Neugier.
Neugier.
Yeah. All right. So Let's go back a little bit in your history.
Sure.
You were born in Jamaica. By the way, congratulations to the many, many medals the Jamaican team and the U.S. American team just
Yes.
won in the athletics championship. By the
Yes.
way, Germany yesterday had a fantastic long jump. Did you see that?
Oh, I missed it. Oh, no.
7 meters 30, unbelievable.
Nice.
Woman's long jump.
Nice.
So you were born in Jamaica. Tell us,
Right.
how did you grow up and how was your childhood like?
I am the eldest of two. I have a sibling as well as a brother and a sister younger than me, and it was fun. In terms of my mom and dad were both educators, so I grew up in a household of nothing but educators. One was focused on the language and reading and writing, and the other was all mathematics. So we're pretty well covered when it came to the academics. But then, Jamaican parents are very strict, and education is number one. So the emphasis was placed upon that. In addition to being educators, they were also entrepreneurs, and they had their business besides doing their education work, and in the wholesale and retail aspects of things. So it was spent a lot of times also traveling with my mom back and forth to get the products and things of that nature that she sold. So conversations around the table were business conversations. That's something that I always grew up listening to. And so, yeah, that's what I would say. It was all fun, business, and education.
As I know, and we'll come to that later, that you have an affection for classical music and opera, and you're a singer. So it sounds like there wasn't much reggae around in your house?
No, we had that too. That was instrumental.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Well, let's see whether I can tempt you to sing a Bob Marley song with me later on in the show. Okay, you can choose which one.
Okay, I'll stop thinking now.
So if I think about that childhood in Jamaica, and then later on, obviously you moved to the US, so we'll come to that in a moment. What were the early seeds during that time which determined what person you were supposed to become later in your life and what person you are now?
That's interesting. I think with the values that my parents kind of raised us with around really being education the fourth and discipline also was part of that upbringing. I think that it was all about, finding your passion and what you love to do, but also, but being realistic too in terms of pursuing that, right? So those are kind of some of the things that we loved playing in terms of playing and going to the beach and just really we work hard, but we also play hard. And I think that was also some of the things too, in terms of what led me to who I am today, because that even instills, if I'm going to work hard, I have to play hard. It's part of my reward.
I love that. I think we are two of the same kind. So, and it's interesting, when I ask you for some biographical information beforehand to prepare, you mentioned that you are a Taurus. This is actually the first time in the Days of Change podcast that I talk about zodiac signs, because I'm usually not a big believer in such. But why did you mention it? What does it mean to you?
Yeah, I love being a Taurus and identify with it really, because one, it's about, we're very loyal beings, and we are also very business acumen and very stubborn at times also. So I take all the good and the bad that comes with Taurus as my being, because that's how I show up. And so we're very earth people also. So everything, when my body is out of alignment or anything like that, if I don't go back to nature, I know, okay, I need to get back into nature, and I'll go for a hike and spend some time just being in nature and being around the earth and spending that time. So that's why I think I mentioned it, because it's who I am as part of my identity.
Oh yeah, that's a nice story. What zodiac sign do you think I am? You have not more than two guesses.
Cancer?
What's that? Cancer? No, not
Okay.
at all.
Okay.
My wife is a Cancer. Yeah.
Okay. Were you a fall baby? Were you a summer baby? Were you a winter baby?
No. I'm Pisces.
Pisces?
Yeah.
Ah, water. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
You balance.
I'm not sure whether I do that, but I'm sensitive, definitely.
Yeah. Well, you bring around a lot of balance to, like, it's fiery signs. Like Taurus tends to be a fiery sign, one of the fiery signs. Yeah. So you bring in like a lot of balance and calm.
Okay.
Anyway.
All right. Let's go on in your life. As I said in the beginning, I had a keynote 2 weeks ago, which didn't only address the issue of identity, but also the concept of home. Actually, here comes another German word. In German, we have the word Heimat, which has no equivalent in English and in most other languages. Heimat means home and homeland. So our homeland ministry is the Heimatministerium. And it means roots also. It's overloaded with meanings and very political in times where people speak about national identity. You can refer to the village and town where you were born. Nationalists speak of a country, a whole country as Heimat. For me, Heimat is the place where I belong to. So if you have understood the concept of Heimat now, home, homeland, roots, what's Heimat for you as somebody with a migration background?
Yeah, that's it when oh, Holger. That word just it meant, when you said it, and the meaning of being roots and where your roots come from. I'm over the firm believer that I don't want to forget where I come from, because it's so much a part of who I am. And being from Jamaica, that's definitely kind of a huge part of who I am and my being today. And so I would say really going back home. But as I'm further away from home, I also feel that sometimes I'm losing that. And that's why I make it very intentional to go back home at least annually, just to get back to the roots and just get back to my being. So yeah, Jamaica is my Heimat.
Okay. So it's nice. So again, listening to reggae, smell the fresh air of Kingston Town and things like that.
Yeah, and the beaches.
And the beaches.
And the beaches.
I must say, unfortunately, I've never been there. I've traveled the world, but Jamaica is one of the white spots on my land.
Absolutely. I say if you've not gone, you've not lived, because it's a totally different experience.
Okay, let's make the rest of your life a little bit condensed. So tell me a little bit. You went to the US. Tell me a little bit about that time. But then, how did you get into your profession? What were the early starts in your profession? But first of all, of course, when did you get to the US, and where, and so on?
Absolutely. We were in Miami. The whole family, actually, my grandmother was really instrumental to bringing us over. She was here back in the 60s, actually. And I used to travel back and forth with my mom as a baby. I was traveling probably in womb, in utero, actually. And so we used to go back and forth a lot to visit my grandma, and she'd come back to Jamaica also. But really and truly, I didn't really feel that I came here till like high school. And I say that because it's sort of like, okay, we are really going to be here. We're not going back home for a while. So yeah, and in doing that, I think that I really loved, because of my father, he was very mathematics oriented, and I kind of gotten that science brain from him and the math brain from him. And that really propelled me into going into a lot of the science work. So I was a biology major / med, and then transferred into pharmacy, and then worked within the pharmaceuticals. So I've always been this science brain person.
Yes, you worked for the pharmaceutical industry for at least 3 companies. In which positions? And what's probably even more interesting than the positions is, what did you learn there for life and for your later profession?
What's interesting for me is that I always wanted to be different. So I didn't want to be the same. I always looked for things that would make me stand out. And I say that because, yes, I went into pharmacy school, and I realized, do I really want to be a pharmacist, or how can I be different? And so what propelled me to doing that is I went into an area where wasn't maybe one of my key strengths, but I want to learn. Again, that curiosity piece came into play. So I went working for the United States Pharmacopoeia, and that's there when I worked with a lot of the PhDs, the really smart people, putting out information that would really impact a lot of people's lives, from healthcare practitioners to patients. And then from there, jumped back over into consulting worlds, where I had an opportunity in France to do some work with some really major companies. And again, that exposed me to the business side of the healthcare system and a lot of the executive leaders on that space. And I said, this is something I can do. After that experience in Europe, I came back to the States, got my MBA, and then that's what really propelled me into the pharmaceutical world. But I didn't want to go into RX because I knew RX. I said, I want to do something I'd not done before. So I went on the consumer side, doing a lot of marketing work around with products and consumer marketing and things of that nature. So that's what kind of propelled me. I'm always looking for areas where I don't have the experience and what I want to learn. And I'll just immerse myself into it.
Okay. And then when and how and why did you make the transition to the work you're doing now?
Sure. After spending some time in the pharmaceuticals, because I worked a couple of verticals, right? I wanted to get all the experience possible. So I went from the medical affairs side to commercialization to market access piece. And when doing that, I realized while I really loved working with the people, and we were very type A driven people, at the end of the day, there was this feeling that the teams were just being exhausted and they were not as motivated to be working with each other. I got curious around that, what's going on? So for me, what propelled me is that I was working maybe 4+ hours traveling 4+ hours per day, and said, this is exhausting. What am I doing? And so I said, there has to be something else that I truly enjoy. And I know that I love, in the health world, helping people, right? That's what I do. But I also love business. And so wanted to find something where I could marry the two. And this is where the coaching piece came into play. What really motivated me further was the fact getting more curious around why were we feeling so and burnt and drained after reaching these amazing results. And it was more around the emotional intelligence piece, right? In terms of how people connect with each other, trust each other, and collaborate with each other. Because yes, we came to work, but were we really fully being there? And how else could we build more trust and connections to really be awesome? And that's the piece that I saw was missing, and that said, that's what I want to do.
But that was still the time when you were within the industry as an employee, yes?
That was as I was exploring. That was during the time where I was exploring what it is that I want to do next, what my next act was going to be.
Okay.
So I was still in the world, but still exploring my next act.
So So here you are now, as I said at the beginning, a coach, a facilitator, and rather than explaining what you do, let's rather jump into some of the subjects you cover, some of the things you care for, you're passionate about. One of your core messages is about people becoming comfortable with oneself, and obviously teams as well. You just mentioned teams. Before we go into what's your philosophy on that, I would like to know from you, what was a moment in your life when you did not feel comfortable with yourself, and what did you learn from it?
It was when I first, well, actually, around, I would say, when it really came forth, it was after I got my MBA and was in this world on the consumer business marketing side. And so there were opportunities where I knew I knew the information, but I was just unsure in terms of, am I doing it right? You know, do I know enough? Do I have the credibility to like motivate these people and influence them in the way I want? And so that was where I was kind of having that unsurety in terms of my voice, and in terms of what I want to represent as a part of my branding, and then also how to work effectively with the teams, and this large teams, right? Because I came in as a certain level, you know, status thing plays a role also into that, and so you're always kind of wondering, well, do I know enough? Am I doing it right? And kind of second guessing yourself on a lot of things.
Okay, and how did you get to the turn? What happened to you that you got out of this dip, let's say?
It's interesting. I like to listen to things of threes. And a colleague came up to me and had said, you know, Simone, you're really well liked here. I go, really? And they said, you know, people listen to you. I go, really? So that was one, but I kind of just blew it off like, okay, I'm not really sure what that meant. And then I went to one of these workshops that now I actually run myself, but training workshops. And someone said, the facilitator came up to me and go, you know, you don't say much, but when you do, you're on point and it's effective. You need to speak up more. And I said, oh, okay, sure. And then it wasn't until, again, I was actually in a room. It was a medical affairs meeting that we were having, and this is when I was on the medical affairs side, and someone was trying to advocate for the budget for their project. And it's a room full of scientists, and they don't get it because they don't have the marketing background, right? But I don't know this person from Adam. I just know she's trying to get monies for her project. And when I realized she's losing this battle, I spoke up because I had the marketing background and the science background. And I said, listen, if we don't do X, it's going to be a big miss, because our competitors are going to be there and going to get the share of mind that we actually want. And that's all I said. And I shut up. and the room kind of just kind of share of voice. What does this share of voice mean? And I kind of broke it down even further. And then I kind of let the room kind of settle as whatever might be. And I looked at the woman next to me who was trying to make her case, and she mouthed, "Thank you."
Yeah, it touches me a lot, because if I think about how much I learned through feedback and appreciation, it's really where we get stronger. I mean, it's important, obviously, that people tell us also where we are weak at.
Yeah,
these are also important moments, but I always see honest feedback and honest appreciation and honest feedback on what we are good at, what we are strong at, helps us so much to grow, isn't it?
Yeah, yes. Yeah, the reinforcement and the acknowledgement piece around it. Yeah, because if no one says anything, I'm still thinking, am I good enough? Am I doing the right thing?
and you know what? Most of us have these thoughts, isn't it? I mean, many do not confess it or do not dare to confess it. Although, thanks to Brené Brown and her fantastic work, we talk much more about our weaknesses. We show much more our vulnerability nowadays. And that's really good development, isn't it?
It is. And it gives you, at least it gives me that space to have that self-awareness and really think about, and reflection, and really think about who am I, right? As part of that, as you're getting your voice, who am I? And what do you represent?
Yeah, I agree with you. And then the path to becoming comfortable with oneself is such a long one. Yeah, I mean, it took me, I mean, I'm still on it. I mean, it started like 30 years ago or 25 years ago when my teacher, Stephen Gilligan, said, you are an incurable deviant, but so is anybody else. And life moves through you. Yeah. And I mean, this last 25 years, I've been trying to, come into peace with myself and becoming comfortable with myself. It takes so much time, isn't it? But the good thing is we talk about it now.
Yes. It's a lot of work, and people sometimes want a quick fix around it, right? Because everyone's like, oh, this is gonna be the quick fix. Tell me the end. And I'm like, no, it's a process, and you have to really honor that process and really give it that time and energy. Because you're talking about you, and if you're not prioritizing you, then who will, right? So that's how I take it too. So that's when I go into hiking, that's what I'm doing.
What are some of the messages you pass on? What are some of the things you teach in your courses or you try to apply when you work with teams?
A couple things. My whole mantra is around voice, power, and confidence. And I use that coming through. And I say that because a lot of us, we have a voice, but we don't use it or don't recognize that we have it. And then how we relate to the word power, right? It's so different. And especially sometimes when I'm working with professional women, when they put the word power out there, they're like, oh, no, we don't do that. But they,
right.
But they don't realize that they're doing such awesome things. And when they don't recognize and get intentional about what that power means to them, it's undermined through their communications, through their behaviors, and they don't even realize it. And so getting them really aware around that and the confidence to step into it is one of the key things that I utilize, regardless if I'm doing how to pitch, how to negotiate, how to become an inclusive leader. Those are things that just kind of are all kind of connected and are the foundational elements around that.
Yeah, let's deconstruct that a little bit.
Sure.
I think you met Julie Diamond in Berlin, didn't you?
Yes.
Who of course talks a lot about power, and actually we had her in an earlier show, and I can really recommend to everybody who's listening to listen to the show with Julie Diamond on
she's
power.
Amazing.
On power, she's amazing. And she basically says power is a resource. It's neither good nor bad. It's a resource which you can use. Is that basically the same what you're saying?
Yeah, I do, because people, I think, have a negative connotation associated with the word. And so as a result of that, I'm more about how do you get access to that, right? And use it effectively and positively for that piece. Yeah. And I think it also comes through around connecting that with emotional intelligence and really how you express yourself, but also being very cognizant around how you are being received and perceived at the same time in doing that. So I think that's where that access can come from.
Is that a balance also between being powerful or using your power in an appropriate way, but also showing humbleness?
It's a combination, absolutely. Because I don't want to get, I guess power is also collapsed with ego, and I'm not saying ego at all, right? Because you can get on the ego side where you're like, this is me and I'm in a powerful state. But I'm more in terms of getting the access to using it for good, being humble, understanding what you have and how you can use it to influence behavior in a positive way.
But wait a second, how many leaders, whether male or female, and obviously it's particularly difficult, with male leaders, or maybe there isn't a difference. Let's see. How many leaders have you met who really use their power wisely and can play with their ego, can self-reflect, and can put their ego behind in view of the team or in view of the task or so? So what's a relationship of leaders who fulfill actually that description?
It's a combination of awareness, right? And that's what makes an effective leader and people manager as opposed to not. And those that don't have those skills that you just mentioned, those are the people I end up working with, right? To bring around the awareness and the humble piece around it, and really utilizing the emotional intelligence piece first in helping shape their awareness of how they bring people together, how they make decisions, and how they adapt and become more flexible to allow, right, others to shine, and to lessen the ego, and to come from more heart, and to build what they really want to build at the end of the day.
And would you say you rather meet young leaders who follow that path because they come from a different background and upbringing, a different social construct? Or would you rather say it's rather mature leaders who kind of made a turn in their life, who have reflected a lot on their leadership style? So is there something you can say about that?
I don't know if I can say anything about that, but from, it's experiences and your beliefs that drive your actions and behaviors, right?
Right.
And so if you are coming from a lens where you might have had a negative experience and just think that it happened to me, I'll do it again, and self-perpetuate that, it's a different animal, as opposed to maybe someone younger who is hungry and wants to learn more and wants to know how, but also not given the opportunity. So it's different, I think, in terms of everyone's experiences. But I think that if you're open, willing, coachable, and want to become a better human being, then yes.
Let's get a bit more practical. So in your seminars or in your work you do with teams and leaders and coaches, what are some of the things you do in terms of little exercises, little things you give them to think about or so, which can make a turn in people's awareness?
One of the things the examples that I bring to the table, for example, is like a yarn exercise. And I use it mostly when just for introductory, to break down some of the uncertainties in the room and people don't really know each other. And it's an opportunity to say, I don't want to hear your title. I want to hear your name, what you do, and your role within the organization, like where you might sit, and a fun fact. But what it does, right, it opens up so many avenues for showing vulnerability, showing uncertainty, having people think, oh my gosh, what am I going to say? What if I make a mistake? But what it does is shows all those commonalities of people just being unsure, right? And it also, in the same breath, brings people together too, because when we kind of break down what their experiences in terms of what they're feeling, how they like the activity, and everyone was like, oh, I'm not alone. And I think that's one of the key things, of people thinking that they're alone when really they're not. And at the end of this exercise, I tell them to hold on to the string, and they'll see that we end up being all connected through the string. And I say, pull back. What happens? Tension. We're all feeling it. Pull in. What happens? We kind of relax and collapse together. We're all connected, and we're feeling it. You're not alone.
Let's get to the other issue, to the voice. You mentioned the voice earlier in the conversation, the connection of the voice to power and self-awareness. But before we go to that, I know that you are a musical person, and I mentioned that earlier in the conversation. You are a singer, and if I'm not wrong, you also play the piano. Is that right?
Yes, absolutely. Yes. I'm not a great singer, but I do love it.
Okay. We still have to sing the reggae song later. I'm just thinking about it. So tell me, what's that about the voice, which you mentioned before? How do you bring the voice into that calculation?
Well, using it, knowing that you have it. And where I'm coming from too is that people had to kind of reinforce that you do have a voice and people are listening, right? And because we're very afraid sometimes to say what we think, share our insights, right? And choose just to let things go. And we have a voice that can actually make a difference, because I think words are so powerful, and what we put out into the universe, it means a lot. And if you have something good to say it. Positive to say it. But not be afraid of holding back. And I think sometimes we hold back because it's maybe fear of a bad consequence or bad repercussions or something of that nature, or just not sure that what you have to say is important. Say it.
So what do you do to teach people to discover and develop their voice?
One of the things that I talk about and work with is around just, first of all, understanding the different levels of being an advocate, for example. And, you start out maybe not really understanding the issues. How can you become more aware, right? What is it that if you rank in that space where you're not sure of the issues, get more educated around it so you can start speaking intelligently around it. Maybe you do know the concepts, but you are not being active or utilizing your voice for yourself or anybody else, right? So now you're getting the awareness piece of what the issues are, but you're just not ready yet. Then, okay, so now maybe we get more well-informed and you're ready, but you're waiting for people to say, hey, can you do X, Y's, and Z's? Can you talk about X, Y's, and Z's, as opposed to being more proactive about it? And then the more you keep practicing and sharing your voice and getting the feedback, you become more of that advocate now, where you are routinely and just, it's in your DNA just to speak up and to say something, right? So those are some of the stages through which I have people identify where they may fall, and then look at areas where, what resources and things that they can do and activities to kind of move them to that next level and keep getting them to that next level where they feel they have that voice and confidence.
So what would you advise me if I think about myself and my voice? And you know me a little bit, you have seen me speaking in public a couple of times. We're having a nice conversation here. I have obviously no issue in speaking up in a one-to-one. Wait. I have no issue to speaking up in a one-to-one conversation. Meanwhile, I'm pretty confident holding a keynote if I'm well prepared. But sometimes in groups, particularly in professional groups, not so much in a group of friends or so, but in professional groups of people, a lot of people with status and knowledge and so on, I feel intimidated. And these are the moments when I'm getting insecure, and I'm getting, my volume goes down. And if I'm speaking, the others are saying 100 sentences and I say 2 or 3. Maybe that's okay, but maybe I want to say a little bit more. But kind of, I get quite intimidated in such moments. I don't know exactly why, but you have an idea? Coach me.
Yeah. Well, you kind of like that narrative, right? You're comparing, you're doing the comparison thing, which can hold people, right? In terms of taking action.
I'm making myself small.
Absolutely. And I say, if you're feeling that way, how many other people are in the room feeling the same way, right? And in doing that, take a risk. what's the worst that's going to happen?
Hmm.
What's the worst that's going to happen? Say something.
Hmm.
Make sure you're heard. That's all I say. Make sure you're heard, because if you're out of sight, out of mind.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, it's some deep-rooted fears, I don't know, to sound silly, to be boring, to repeat myself, all this kind of stuff.
Yeah, I take the opposite end. Because I am like, I'm going to put myself out there. I'm going to do it wholly, right? But I also say, you know what? I may have opposing views in the room, but this is how I think and see things, and then I kind of get other people to chime in, and sometimes no, I don't see it this way, and that's okay. They have their opinions, but you've now been heard, and you've started something different.
I remember earlier in the conversation you mentioned emotional intelligence, which obviously is something which I'm also very passionate about it, and I think it's so important in leadership. Tell me what's your take on that? Why do you think emotional intelligence is important in business?
Important because it's really vital to helping those skills that are so necessary, and it's not really taught, right? You don't go to school and say, I'm going to teach you about emotional intelligence. It's something that you have to develop and be aware of. And, when you're talking about emotional intelligence, you're looking at how you manage stress, how you make decisions, how you build relationships, how you express yourself, and how you actually see and perceive yourself. What's that narrative going through your brain, and how is it being manifested when you interact with others? Mm-hmm. And so I think that it helps to have people, if you want them to become better people, managers, and just better humans, right? It's how do you have the ability to manage a team that happens to be diverse? Because you think that you have a team that's diverse, you're automatically going to get great outcomes. No, you have to know how to tap into those what they value, what motivates them, what triggers them, and really understand that team's dynamics to really propel them to that next level. But if you don't have that emotional awareness and intelligence piece of it, you've missed an opportunity as a leader.
Can one develop emotional intelligence? That's the $1 million question.
That's the $1 million question. Through awareness and understanding, first of all, you're going to get feedback, right? You're going to get feedback and hear about it. But they don't say, oh, you don't have emotional intelligence. They say, oh, this person spoke hostilely towards me, or this person didn't include me in decision making, or this person's not flexible or adapting to change. Guess what? Those are the elements of emotional intelligence. And when you peel it back even further, you get down more to the core. Is it lack of empathy? Right? Is it that they just really and truly don't really understand how to manage stress, and it's their way and the highway? Right? So a lot of things come out in terms of how, and even how they communicate. Maybe they weren't taught how to communicate effectively, and just thought that if they say something very hostily, that everyone's going to fall in line.
It's fascinating work we are doing, and sometimes I find it really, really, really hard because people are grown-ups. They have had all their experience, their socialization. They went through life. They are the person who they are, and to bring in this spark, which incends the light of awareness, is. I'm happy if I'm successful in that, and yeah. I'm very humble. I'm very, very humble.
Yeah. I have to be. I always go into conversations where I just go, you know what? I'm going to learn something today, and all I'm going to do is listen. And that's all I will do for a whole conversation, is just listen to what that other person has to say, because there's value there. I just have to hear it and listen to it and hear for it, right? And so if people can just do that, just actively listen to somebody else, you're 99% there.
So, chocolate. What's your relationship to chocolate?
Oh my gosh. I love chocolate. It's a vice. Yeah, it is the thing I go to when I'm feeling really, really good, and also when I need a really good pick-me-up. And it's just not any type of chocolate. It has to be really good chocolate.
What's really good chocolate for you? Tell me what type you are. I'll tell you what chocolate type I am.
Okay. It's interesting. I love three types. I love the milk chocolate. I love the chocolate with like little hazelnuts in it. And then also the chocolate that has like the truffle fillings in it.
All right. So it sounds like you're also not too much on the bitter side, yeah? So
no.
I discovered 55 to 60% cocoa content is just the right thing. So a little bit towards the bitter, a little bit acidity. There are some new types of chocolates coming all the time. Okay.
You know, I went over the whole, like last summer, they had a huge chocolate, fair in Paris.
Okay.
And I ended up going there, and I was in heaven. Everything was in chocolate, and it was from all over the world. And it was just amazing just to taste different chocolates from the different regions and cultures, and how proud everybody was about their presentations of and their interpretations of the chocolate. And it was beautiful, beautiful. I was in heaven. I was.
Three choices. Redemption Song, I Shot the Sheriff, or No Woman, No Cry.
Redemption Song.
Yeah, I love that.
Okay.
Old pirates, yes, they rob I.
Sold I to the merchant ships.
Minutes after they took I.
From the bottomless pits.
But my hand was made strong.
By the hand of the Almighty.
We forward in this generation.
Triumphantly.
Won't you help to sing
these songs of freedom?
'Cause all I ever have.
Redemption songs.
Redemption songs. Hey.
Whoa.
Hey.
Love it.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you very much for doing it with me. I love that song. And then, of course, the next two lines are so important. Emancipate yourselves from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our minds. It's all about that, isn't it?
Yeah.
Simone, we have to talk about the change days. You were in Berlin twice, and you're going to facilitate this year in Toronto, the Toronto Change Day. Yeah, we're going to meet.
Yes, I'm so excited about doing it. And I was just like, oh, I love Berlin, but I'm like, it's going to be fun. Values.
Yeah.
Who can miss values?
Yeah. And folks, this will really be an opportunity, particularly if you're on that side of the ocean. You're always invited to come to Berlin, and we have this year like 8 or 9 Australians coming, and a couple of people, people from Canada, the US, and everywhere.
Nice.
So the best is go to both. Come to Berlin on 1st to 3rd of November, and then this is on Spaces as a metaphor for change, and then Living Values on November 22nd to 24 in Toronto. We both will be there, so you don't want to miss us and other great people. But to water people's mouths, if you think about your Change Days experience, what's special about Change Days? How would you describe Change Days?
Oh, well, love, learning, and just being.
I love that. Love, learning, and being. Yeah. Simone, thanks a lot for the love you have been giving to me and to our listeners. Thanks a lot for the learning you gave us. And thanks a lot for being here. It was a great time with you.
Thank you so much, Olga, for having me. It's always a pleasure. And I just love, like I said, being in your presence and working with you today. It's lots of fun. It wasn't even work, it was just having fun and hanging out with you.
Yeah, we should do that more often. And we'll do that in Toronto.
Yes, absolutely. Looking forward to it.
We go out and look for some chocolate and some...
Yes.
And I tell you what, red wine goes well with chocolate.
Yes. And then we also have to get some, go to a reggae place. Find a reggae place to go to.
We'll ask Nick. Nick is a musician.
Yes.
Okay.
He knows it all.
See you soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you.